In this video, we're going to explain some of the basic features of parts invoicing. Parts invoicing section is located at the top left-hand corner of the parts and service screen. It starts with building a parts quote, converting that quote to an invoice or starting a brand new invoice, or doing point of sale where customers are bringing the parts directly to the register and you're ringing them up. Parts picking, which is in large operations, you will have a person that takes the order, walks around and pulls the parts from the shelves and then delivers them either to the shipping department or takes them out to the mechanics and delivers them at their bays. Searching past invoices and handling parts requests that come in from the mechanics. Parts requests are where the mechanic will have a computer at his bay that he can type in that he needs a specific part for a specific RO. That part will then be displayed on the parts request screen, and the picker can pick the part and take it out to the mechanic, creating shop efficiency for the service department. Let's start with a new quote. To start a new quote, we just click the new quote button. The computer brings up an invoicing screen. At the top of the screen, we call this the header. Inside the header, you have the ability to recall your customer or entity that you want to build this quote for. Clicking the drop-down list allows you different search criteria. For example, if I am shipping to a company, I can click company name, and then under the search text box, I can enter in the company name. I can do it by last name, phone number, or entity number. What's nice about this feature is when I select last name and I come back to this a day later or any other time, it will remember that I like to search by last name. If another user prefers to search by phone number, when they log in using their credentials, the system will remember that they like to find customers and companies through a phone number search. So we're going to type in Smith, comma, Gary, which is a test customer for this demonstration. And you can see we have a lot of Gary Smiths in here, but in this case we want the first one at the top, which says Gary Smith. Now I can click the OK button, or I can type in a row. So if I didn't want row number 1, I could type in 23, but I want number 1. Now I'm going to back out of this and show you how quickly you can recall a customer. So I'm going to cancel. I'm going to type in Gary Smith again, hit enter, and I'm just going to hit enter because the computer is already set to row number 1. So that's how quick and easy it is to recall a customer. Type in their name, see what the row is. If they're on row number 1, just hit the enter or return key, and the system will recall that customer. Now Gary Smith owes us some money. And it shows us that he owes us $344,000. And that's because we have him set up as a test customer to run test scenarios. But we are alerted to this because Gary Smith's name and address is highlighted in red, which means he is on a credit hold and we cannot let him pay on account. Let's go over here to the left of Gary Smith, and we can see that currently there is no invoice number assigned to this ticket. That will get assigned as soon as we close the ticket out. We can see what the status is, that it is a parts quote. The difference between a parts quote and an invoice is that a parts quote will not relieve any inventory quantities. You can build this out, save it, and the computer system is going to look at that as only being an estimate for somebody. If I want to take a parts quote and convert it to an invoice, I only need to select an invoice status. The computer system recalculates it, and if there are any parts there that were in the relieved column, it would relieve those parts from the inventory. Let's go back and set this back to a parts quote. If this parts quote turns into an invoice, and you're dealing with a company, they may give you a customer PO number. At that point, you can just type in the PO number right here in the customer PO number box. In this case, we're doing a parts retail ticket. We could make it a parts wholesale or a parts internal, which we're going to just take some parts and put them on an RV so that we don't have to use a service internal. You can drop parts right under parts inventory and it will be billed to the sales department. Parts body shop, policy charges, parts intercompany is if you have multi-locations and you're going to move parts from one company to another. And this will transfer the inventory from Profit Center 01 to Profit Center 02 and do all the accounting journal entries to keep the accounting inventories up to date also. You have rental sales, and you have parts reserved, and then we have parts retail. Parts reserved is if you have your own special category that you want to create tickets under, maybe for web orders or some other type that fits your business specifically. And then we have the cash out date. You cannot enter the cash out date. This is when you cash out the ticket and take payment or put it on account. The computer will enter the cash out date for you. Let's go ahead and type in some part numbers. The system also uses a feature called identifiers. For example, I can type the number 1 and I hit enter and it changes it to 559021. I could have typed in 55-9012 and I've done the same thing. The reason why we use identifiers, and that will be explained in more detail in a later video, but you can purchase parts from multiple distributors. It can be the same part, but one distributor uses part number 123 and another uses 124, and possibly use your own part number, which might be 345. So when you set up the part in the parts inventory, you can actually give it all of these different identifiers, and if you use any one of the 3 or total of parts identifiers, you can have unlimited identifiers on a part, but if you use any one of those identifiers, the system will know which part to bring back. So in this case here, I typed in a 1 because that's one of my identifiers for this part to make demonstrations easy, and it brought back the 55-9012. To delete a part, all I have to do is click this record selector here to the left and hit the delete key on the keyboard. And it'll ask me if I want to delete the row, and I'll say yes. So right now we've got this one part here, which is a connector amp. It's for company number 1. I've sold 1. I haven't relieved any because it's a quote showing me a difference of 1. The LS stands for lost sales. And you're going to see on an invoice, which is the exact same screen but just a different status, you'll be able to type in the quantity of a lost sale. So if a customer comes in and goes to buy, let's say this 55-9012, and I don't have any on stock, and he says, okay, I'm leaving, I can say, well, I just lost a sale for one of these and put in comments. And the computer system will give me a report that I can see how many parts that I have lost sales because I didn't have them in stock, and I may want to change my stocking parameters to have these brought in. In this case here, Gary Smith has a 2010 Suzuki Equator. What this allows you to do is track the parts that are going to a specific vehicle. It will default to the customer's vehicle, but if they had more than one vehicle, you could select that. And it just allows you to get an analysis of the parts that are being applied to his Equator versus his Ford F-150. Based on the customer you've selected's pricing category, the computer will calculate the suggested selling price. If you have a core for this, it will actually charge a core, but the first thing it's going to do is ask, does the customer have the core with them? If you say yes, it will not charge the core charge, and it will take that core and put it into your core inventory. If you want to give a line item discount, You can just type a line item discount right here in the field. We'll give him a $2 discount. That puts the total at $34.75. We can see that Gary Smith's pricing calculation, the price category that we've assigned to this customer, is 75C. This is very important. The system uses different pricing categories. 75C is going to take the part and mark it up 75% above cost. So if the part were $1, it would give you a suggested selling price of $1.75. You also have the letter L. So if you had 80L, L is the list or manufacturer suggested retail price. 80L would be 80% of that. So if the manufacturer suggested that you sell this part for $1, 80L would discount that down to 80 cents, 80% of the list price. You can also do something like 75A, which would be 75% above your average cost, whereas 75C is 75% above your replacement cost. Now these are all set by your parts manager and your accounting department as to what they want to charge these customers and set the credit limits up, which is discussed in a later video. Let's go ahead and type in another part here. I used an identifier called 2. A few other features that you have on the parts invoicing. You can click and see if there are any superseding part numbers for this part, or if there are any substitute part numbers. Substitutes are other parts that you could actually use in place of the part that you're using there if you're out of stock on it. You then have the upsell. Upsell items are items that the computer calculates that when people bought this part, 88-1253, they also bought these other parts along with it. This gives you an opportunity to upsell to your customers. If there are any accessories that are added to this, for example, using a computer system as a part, and then you had accessories such as a printer, a mouse, a special keyboard, and things like that, those items could be listed up here in the accessories tab. And you set those accessories up under the add modify parts inventory, which we'll discuss in a later video. The bin locations allow you to select which bin you want to remove this part from. There's always a default bin that is set in the master parts inventory, and if you do not select a bin, it will remove that part from the default bin. Then you have the option of doing a Google search. Clicking this button opens up Google and shows you other connectors or parts that match the description of what you're selling. So if you don't have any in stock and you want to do a quick Google search, just click the G and it'll do a Google product search for you. And then finally you have the info view. This allows you to pull up the parts master inventory right here on this parts invoicing screen. And again, we'll go through this in another video. But as a user, if you have security permissions, you can see the parts inventory information without leaving the screen. Down here at the bottom, you have the parts info boxes. They'll show you what's total on hand, total on order, and total allocated. Now the system will allocate parts. For example, in the service department, if there is a oil change being done and it needs 4 quarts of oil and a filter, they may put those parts onto that service ticket, but they haven't pulled the parts because they haven't started the job yet. The system will automatically allocate those 4 quarts of oil and that oil filter. And that's what you have here as allocated. In this case, this part number, 88-1253, has 4 that are on a service ticket that have been allocated to another customer. And the reason for this is if your parts person goes back to the back and looks in the bin, they may see that there are 5 in the bin, and the customer at the counter wants to buy all 5 of them. When they look here on the screen, they can see, no, I can't sell you all 5. 4 of them are needed for a service job. Then you have a cost of the part, and you have the retail price. Next you have the bins, and you can see that this is the default or preferred bin is A1. It's been checked. You can select which employee is actually selling this invoice and who would get credit for them on their commissions if you're paying commissions to your parts managers. Then you have your totals here. Shows you your parts total and core, freight, sales tax, and then your total balance. Since this is just a quote, we're going to go ahead here and exit the quote. And now, if we want to look at our quotes, we go down here to the bottom left-hand corner and we click the quote tab, and you can see our parts retail quote for Gary Smith. So if Gary decides that he wants to purchase this, we'll just click the open button and we'll change this to an invoice. And now the computer has been recalculated and these items are ready to be relieved. So I'll just relieve them because I'm taking them out of the bins. And if Gary is ready to cash the ticket out, I can click the cash out button. Now we're going to hold off on cashing the invoice out at this point and talk about some of these other buttons down here. The order parts button allows us to order parts directly from this invoice. For example, if we put a part on this invoice, and as you can see, we have total on hand 0, but a customer wants 5 of them. And so we can do a special order immediately by just clicking the order parts. And right there we are. It says I need a quantity of 5. And all I have to do is I can place it on my order list, or I can place it directly on a purchase order and send that to the supplier. I'm going to cancel this for right now and remove this part because we're going to talk about the order list and purchase orders in another video. But this just shows you that right from the screen you can create your own purchase order. Apply a return allows you to type in an invoice number, click OK, and the computer will find that invoice, and whatever parts were on that invoice, it will automatically put them on your screen with a negative sale and a negative receive to give the person credit. If there was a list of those parts and he was only returning one of them, I would just have to highlight that part and hit the delete key on the ones that I did not want to have on the screen for a return. What this does is it makes sure that the person actually bought that part from your dealership before you start to give him a parts credit for it. If you want to give the customer a discount, you can click the discount button and type in 10%, and that will discount the entire ticket, which is different from the line item discounts. If I don't know a part number, I can hit search parts and I can go and say find, and it loads up all the parts here. Or if I want to find it by description, I can click on the description field and I can type in a description like pump, and I hit find, and every field that's got the word pump in it, and then every description that has the word pump in it will be displayed. And all I have to do is highlight them and double click them, and it puts them down here in the grid. I'll put a couple of pumps there, and when I click the OK button, it adds those parts right to the invoice. To delete them, I can highlight both of them, hit delete, and it says I have selected 2 parts for deletion. If I want to search a price list or a price book, I can select the parts distribution company that I want to search for, and I get a complete listing of all of their parts. I can search for part numbers within their own price books. If I have parts kits, I can apply a kit to it, such as an oil change. And what that does, it automatically puts all the parts onto this invoice. And parts kits are also used in conjunction with canned jobs. So if I'm doing an oil change in the service department, as a parts manager, I can throw a parts kit directly onto that service job, and I'll have all the parts that are needed without having to type them in individually. Core credits, if somebody's bringing back their core and you want to give them credit for it, you can give them credit for it right here on this invoice. All you have to do is type in the invoice number that they were originally charged the credit, and it's just like a return, and then it would put that core back into your core inventory. If you have a special order that you're going to do and you're going to take a deposit on it, just click the deposit key and type in the amount of the deposit that you're going to take on that special order part. You can put some comments in, and then you can either cash it out or send it to the cashier. Cashing out means that you're going to take the money directly from the customer, or if you have a specific central cashier that everybody sends their tickets to and she collects the money, you click the send to cashier. We're going to cancel this deposit. If I want to add a note to Gary Smith's account, which would be attached to his CRM entity file, I can type in a note and I can hit OK. And this is where your parts inventory system is connected to your CRM, where the parts manager can create notes and track his department against the entities. At this point, we're ready to go ahead and cash out this ticket. So we're going to hit the cash out. And we have some error messages here saying that line 3 and 4 must be relieved. And you see we've got 5 here, so I'll go ahead and pull those off the shelf. And then I will put the oil filter in, and then we're going to go to cash out. The cash out screen allows you to take 7 different payments. So if the person comes in and says, bill's $100, but I have $20 in cash, and I'll give you $50 in checks. And then the rest I'm going to put on my MasterCard. And at this point, you can swipe the card, you'll dial the merchant, get approval. So I'm going to back up of this, and I'll just take some more cash to balance it out because I'm not hooked up to an internet. At this point, we've collected all of the money that we needed, and we can print the receipt, or we can email a copy of the receipt to the customer, or we can do both, print it and email it. If his email address is on file in his CRM system, the parts department will pick up that email address from his entity and shoot the email over to it. Now that looked like a lot of work, and because we took it from a quote into an invoice and we added parts and deleted parts. But if you're a parts manager at the retail counter, you're going to use the point of sale option. And the point of sale, you just click point of sale here. It's going to come up. We suggest that you, again, search for the customer, but you don't have to. You can put the part on by typing the number in or using a barcode scanner. And it automatically sells one at a time and receives them. And then I just have to hit cash out and take the money and print the receipt. And that's how fast I can do a cash transaction. Parts picking. If you're in a very large operation, you're going to have a very big warehouse and normally have people that are going to go around and pull the parts off the shelf. They can just open up a service ticket, and when they open up the service ticket, they can see what parts are actually needed on that service ticket. So if I click on another one here, you can see this one just needs some carpet, and with each one. And so he can open up these, and then he can go through and he can print a picking ticket to take with him, and he can pick the parts. And when he comes back, he can just say relieve all, and it automatically says he's picked those parts. Or if he didn't get them all, he could change 1 to 0, and then have those parts taken out and delivered to the mechanics, or have them taken to the shipping department to be shipped to a customer. Search invoices allows you to find invoices by either a document number, which is an invoice number, the customer's last name, his customer number, but we call customers entities, by a company name, phone number. If this was a part that was tied to a vehicle for internal purposes, it can be done with a primary serial number or stock number. Parts requests come from the mechanics out in the service bays. It eliminates the need for a mechanic to have to walk all the way over to the parts department and get the parts. They stay in their bays, the service advisors transmit the jobs that they need to do, and the mechanics do the work and they type in on their computer terminal any parts that they need. These parts requests will show up, and you can see here that the Jim Curtis needs some foam for a sofa. So the parts picker can go out, get that foam, put it on the service ticket, and then go deliver it to the mechanic, creating an efficiency for the mechanic where they're constantly doing work and not wasting time walking back and forth to the parts department. Let's go back to invoicing and talk about a few other advanced features. You have a unit and you need to put a part on the unit. In normal circumstances, you would have a service internal, but with Infinity, it allows you to do a parts internal. So if I'm going to put a part on, I can come over here and I can say apply internal, and that says I'm going to apply this to the dealership. And then I can come over here and I can click the 3-button search and search for the unit that I want to apply that to. I'll put it here on this pleasure way. And so now we know that this part is going on stock number 10025. And all I have to do is close the ticket out. We'll leave it first, and then I'll close the ticket out. And the sales department has just been charged $35 this part on stock number. Another feature of the Infinity Parts invoicing system is that you can actually import web orders. So if you have a parts website that you sell these parts on, you can create a download from the website, and the system will import them and display those invoices that came from the website as a web order. Whether you're processing a web order or you just want to process a shipping order, start a new invoice or open the web order. If this is a standard shipping invoice, type in the company or person that you're shipping to. Put the parts on, pull them off the shelf, and now you want to select a shipping address. So you click on the side tabs next to the customer's name and you can get to the shipping information, and you can have multiple addresses to ship to for this customer. You also have a selection where you can type in the terms and a freight button. Clicking the freight button will display your primary shipping methods pricing. For example, if UPS is your primary shipper, then the freight button will display information from their website regarding shipping pricing. If there are taxes that need to be charged because an item is being shipped to a different state, you can click the tax information button and adjust or override the taxes based on the state that it's going to be shipped to. The system will pick up the state and city of where the package is going and charge the sales tax based on the delivery address and not the billing address. If you're wanting this to be a drop ship and you had sent a drop ship order to your supplier, you need only to click the DS or drop ship checkbox. This tells the system that you did not receive that item into your physical inventory. You did sell it, you did relieve it, but it really never touched your premises. At this point, you can cash out the ticket in the usual manner. If you type in an identifier or a part number that is used by two different parts, for example, you have two suppliers that supply you with two completely different parts, but those suppliers use the same part number. In this case, we typed an identifier of 3, but 3 is attached to two different parts. The system will pop up with a listing of all parts that will match that identifier, and you can select the part that you want to put onto the ticket. If I type a part number in that requires a core, the system will prompt me to ask, does the customer have the core with them? If I leave the option set at no, the customer is then going to be charged whatever the core fee is that was set up in the master inventory file. So in this case here, I will say OK. And as you can see, under the core charge, there's a $10 fee. If I did the same thing with the part, and I say yes, he has the core with him, you can see that the customer will charge 0 core fee, and this core will be put into your core inventory that you can then run a report and manage your cores to make sure that you ship them back to the manufacturer and get credit for them. If this ticket is cashed out, you will have charged the customer $10 for the one core that he did not return. If he does return later with the core, you can come down on a new invoice and click Core Credit, type in this invoice number, and it will automatically give him a credit that you can refund him the money that he had paid you in the beginning for the core charge. If a customer comes in and asks for a part, and you have a situation that you don't have those in stock and he decides that he's going to go somewhere else and purchase them, you have the ability to go in under your lost sales and type in the amount that he was asking for that you did not have available for sale. When you type that amount in, the computer is going to prompt you for a comment. You can type in the comment, and then later on you can get an analysis report that starts to show you how many sales that you have lost and for what reason, and then you can make a purchasing decision as to whether or not you should start to stock that item or higher quantities of that item. There are certain parts that require a serial number to be traced with the part. Infinity will prompt you for the serial number if that part was tagged as a part that requires serial number tracking. Serial numbers can be preloaded in the system for each one of the parts, and if that's the case, you could just hit the drop down and select the serial number for the item that you're selling. In this case, this part has no serial numbers preloaded, so I can type in a serial number and save it with the part. If in the future the customer comes in and returns the item, the system will track the serial number back to the original sale. If the serial numbers do not match, it will not allow you to complete the transaction for a return. This protects the company from somebody purchasing a new serialized part and returning an older one that may be damaged or defective. Many times you will want to pre-authorize a credit card for a charge that you're possibly going to ship or put a quote together for. You can do that by going to the Program menu and clicking Pre-authorize Credit Card. At that point, the system will then ask you to swipe the credit card. It will send out an authorization request and return as to whether or not the amount has been locked up on their credit card. Once that function has been completed, you would then be able to click on the additional info at the bottom with the totals, and it will give you the pre-authorization information, including a transaction ID. That transaction ID will then be used when you decide to cash this ticket out and apply it to that credit card that they gave you for pre-authorization. There are times that you will have parts in your master inventory that may come under special circumstances where you will not know the immediate cost. Those items can be set to prompt for cost. You type in the cost of the part as you know it at that point in time. Hit OK, and that is the cost of the part, and you mark up the retail price on the screen. In the parts master inventory, on each part you can designate whether the user can modify the description. If you wish to type in a new description or modify the one that's already listed on the screen, just click into the description box and make your modification. If you're working in an invoice and need to leave the invoice temporarily to do other work, you don't have to close the invoice out. If you close the invoice out, you'll have to recall it by finding it in the list. And there may be a lot of them there that you'll have to search through to find the one that you're working on. It's better to just minimize the invoice. And you can do this by clicking the minimize button, and that puts it down into what we call our current items. And then you can go and do something else on the system while having that current item still active. Possibly you want to open up another invoice, and you can work on that invoice. And again, you can put that down into the current items by minimizing it, and you can see the different invoices. You can even have a PO or a receiving ticket or other documents down here in the current items. Just clicking on the current item option will bring it back up into the forefront of the screen. If you want to see the history of invoices with a customer, click on the history icon. In this case, Joseph Alberts only has one parts transaction with our company, and that one is the one that we're working on and in process. If he had others, they would be listed down here in a complete list showing whether they had been closed or cashed out. You could highlight those and hit OK and actually open up the closed invoice and view the totals and other information as to what he had purchased. If you want to email Joseph Alberts, just click the little mail icon and the email editor pops up. In this case, we don't have an email loaded in for Joseph Alberts, so we'd have to type in his email. Now if you notice under the entity line, that means that this email that you're going to send to Joseph is going to be tracked in his CRM. And if at any time we want to print a ticket without cashing it out, we just need to click the print button. And then we have a group of options here. We can print the customer's copy. We can print an internal copy if this were for an internal vehicle. We can print an accounting copy, which would show our costs. We can do a full disclosure for such as like a service ticket, which would have all the details of the mechanic notes. On a parts ticket, you have the ability of printing a full one-page invoice or setting the system up to print receipts, which are 4-inch pieces of paper that is a standard cash register receipt. You can print a pick ticket, so if you need these items picked, you can print the ticket off and hand it to your person to go out into the warehouse and pull the items. And you can print a shipping document, which would be a packing slip that would go into the box as you're shipping the items out.